Well, hello everyone. I am very excited about the video that I'm going to be discussing today because I'm going to be talking about the Oscars. And although the Oscars aren't my favorite thing in the world, what I do like about the Oscars is that they often bring light to films that may not be discussed otherwise. And a while ago, I did a video on my predictions of who I thought were going to win in certain categories of the Oscars. And the actual awards are coming up very soon. And my time has been very limited lately. So I wanted to watch as many of the Oscar films in all of the categories this year as I possibly could. And it's getting closer to the Oscars. There's a few I still haven't got to check out. I haven't seen Babylon. I haven't seen Avatar: Way of the Water. There's a couple more in the smaller categories like Close, Bardo, some things that I really want to see that I just circumstantially it just hasn't worked out for me to be able to watch those movies. So with where I'm sitting at right now, I have seen 21 of the Oscar nominated films this year. And so I thought I would go through and rank them from my least favorite to my favorite of the movies that were released for the Oscars this year. And when I do eventually come around to seeing Avatar and Babylon and Bardo and Close and all of these films that I've missed, I'll add those onto the list later and let you guys know where they would fall on this ranking. But I wanted to get this ranking done before the actual release date of the Oscars. So I'm going to get into it right now. So as I always say when I make these videos, this is just my opinion. It is not fact. It is just the way that I feel about these nominations and which movies impacted me the most and which movies impacted me nothing at all. So we're going to get into it right now. Coming in at number 21 is going to be the film Top Gun Maverick. I know this is going to probably be one of my most controversial opinions of the entire video, but I hated this movie. If you watched my review, you can get my full thoughts on it. I thought it was political propaganda. I thought it was sloppy screenwriting. I know people were really mesmerized by the editing. I was not really attached to the characters, didn't care about this story whatsoever, and even the third act sequence wasn't enough for me to stay hooked. I forgot this movie already, and I'll never watch it again. Coming in at number 20 is Andrew Dominik's Blonde, probably one of the most controversial films of the year, and it was hot garbage. Aside from Ana de Armas's brilliant performance with what the material that she was given, this movie was laughably bad. The dialogue was horrible. Some of the cinematography in it was brilliant, and some of it was just downright baffling as to how horrible it was. The constant change in aspect ratio, changing it to black and white, all of these decisions that didn't really add into the overall impact of the film made me really dislike this one a lot. Coming in at number 19 is Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, a film that I did not like at all. I'm not a big Baz Luhrmann fan anyway, but this movie had chaotic editing that didn't work. It felt like a 2.5 hour long trailer to a movie rather than having any real substance. Tom Hanks gives probably the worst performance of his entire career. Austin Butler does well with what he's given, but aside from the musical performance numbers in this, it did absolutely nothing for me at all. Coming in at number 18 is Sam Mendes's Empire of Light, a by-the-numbers Oscar bait film that has some really decent performances in it, but fails to handle all of the subject matter that it wants to tackle really well. It tries to juggle ideas of racism, mistreatment of women, of mental health issues, of all of these different elements that just don't ever stack up to a powerful ending, and that was really disappointing. Coming in at number 17 is Darren Aronofsky's The Whale. Despite Brendan Fraser's great performance in this, I could not get past the sappy Hallmark-esque writing that felt so unrealistic. None of it felt emotionally impactful or engaging. It was just like the entire movie I was baffled as to why people were so attached to this source material. The last shot of this film is one of the most laughable scenes in a movie I've seen in years. The emotional manipulation with the music felt so cheesy. You could really see that it was adapted from a stage play because none of this felt very realistic. Coming in at number 16 is Ruben Östlund's Triangle of Sadness, a movie I wanted to love that I really didn't like all that much. I think it had some nice performances, some decent cinematography, but it was like 2.5 hours long. It was so bloated. The second act on the boat with Woody Harrelson's character was the only part of the movie that was really funny or subversive. The rest of the movie was so on the nose in repetitive, and most of it wasn't funny at all. I feel like it was so wannabe Yorgos Lanthimos, but had none of the nuance or intellect that Yorgos Lanthimos has in his writing, and this is a movie that I completely forgot pretty much a week after I watched it. Coming in at number 15 is Tar. Yes, Cate Blanchett does give a brilliant performance in this film, but I really didn't get much out of it, aside from a character that is incredibly toxic, who uses their position of power to manipulate her students and the people in her lives to get what she wants, essentially. You're really not learning anything from it. It's mostly just bad people will eventually get their just desserts, and that's fine if that's what you want it to be, but it didn't need to be a 2+ hour long film that just felt really repetitive, and I didn't really get a lot out of this one. Coming in at number 14 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, a beautiful stop motion animation film that I think Guillermo is such an incredible director. The musical numbers in this are really great. I just cannot stand the character of Pinocchio. He is so annoying and obnoxious to me. Most of the runtime of this film is his character, which really took me out of it because I can't stand him. This whole idea of blindly abiding by what your parents tell you to do solely because you have to is such an outdated concept, and I feel like Guillermo kind of steps away from it a little bit, but it still plays too heavily into the original source material for me to really care about this one all that much. But I do think it's really beautifully animated and understand why it was nominated. So from this point on, these are all films that I think are definitely worth you watching and that I have really, really enjoyed. Coming in at number 13 is All Quiet on the Western Front. I am not a huge war movie guy. I've enjoyed war movies in the past, but a lot of them feel like military propaganda, and so I'm not always on board to watch them. But All Quiet on the Western Front was really well done. It was beautifully shot, incredible performances, very depressing and realistic, and if you're into war movies, this is one you're really gonna like. Coming in at number 12 is the film EO. This was very beautiful, a look at the way that society treats animals, also just humanity in general, told through these little vignettes of this donkey running into different people and us kind of seeing their story through his eyes. Beautifully shot, some of the best cinematography I've seen in a film from last year, but aside from that, it gets a little bit too juggled up in its own ideas for me to really love it a lot. I really liked it, and I definitely still think it's worth your time to watch. Coming in at number 11 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I absolutely adored this movie. I did not expect a sequel to a film that I completely forgot to be so incredibly well done, juggling some really adult themes while also being incredibly hilarious and fun and entertaining and engaging. It is one of the best animated movies that was released last year, and I would recommend it to any and everyone to see. Alright, so we are in top 10 territory, and I'm very excited to get into these ones. Coming in at number 10 is The Batman from Matt Reeves. I know this was only nominated for like special effects, but it was fantastic. This is probably my favorite Batman movie that's ever been released. I really loved all of the performances in this. It treated Batman as a detective. I really liked how he was isolated away from the world, because after going through a tragedy like that, the last thing you would want to be is this beaming socialite. So I think they handled all of it really well. Every performance was great. I'm actually really excited to see what Matt Reeves does with the Batman character and the sequels to follow this one. This is the most excited I've been about a superhero franchise in a very long time, and it's definitely worth your time to watch. Coming in at number 9 is the film To Leslie, a movie I feel like no one talked about, where Andrea Riseborough gave an absolutely incredible performance. Mark Maron is in this film. He is also amazing, and it's a very simplistic story that is incredibly engaging and thought-provoking and heartfelt and just so well done, and I hope the Oscars bring more attention to this one because it was amazing. Coming in at number 8 is Steven Spielberg's The Fablemans, a love letter to cinema that is handled so brilliantly. I feel like all of the performances in this were outstanding. This seems to be the most excited that Steven Spielberg has been about making a project in a very long time. I'm glad to see him back on his horse making things that are just so incredible, and this movie did not leave my mind for a very long time after I watched it. I still think about it now. Coming in at number 7 is the film Women Talking. This movie was rough to watch, but it was totally worth it. Every performance in this film was phenomenal from top to bottom. The dialogue between these characters was so moving and powerful, and it really just looked at this idea of women that have dealt with sexual assault and women that have been abused by men or people in power in religious communities, and how religious indoctrination can really negatively affect people if it's all you've ever known in your life. And it was a movie that really left me thinking for a long time and really just kind of brutalized me emotionally. I sobbed multiple times during this film. It's amazing. Coming in at number 6, one of the most slept on films of the year in my personal opinion is the film Causeway, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry. A quiet, beautiful, simple story that was executed so well. The conversations that those two characters have were so moving and beautiful. I loved everything about this movie, and I hope the Oscars get more people talking about it, even though Brian Tyree Henry was the only nomination for this film. Coming in at number 5 is Marcel, the Shell with Shoes On, a movie that if you didn't enjoy something about it, you have no soul. It was so thoughtful and beautiful and heartwarming. The character of Marcel is a character that I think we can all love and care for. There were so many really interesting perspectives on the world and the way society acts as a whole, and I feel like it was so much more than it actually needed to be, and I'm grateful for that. And A24 was really knocking it out of the park this year, and Marcel is one of the best movies I saw all of last year, and I'm glad that it was nominated. Coming in at number 4 is the film The Quiet Girl, another film that I feel like no one talked about that is so beautiful. This movie moved me to tears multiple times. It's so quiet. The dialogue is very simple, but it's all about cinematography and performances and the placement of the camera, little gestures that characters do between one another that really attach you to these characters and really make you hurt for them and want to understand their stories. And that's something that I really appreciated about this movie, and I hope more people will watch it after the Oscars because it was incredible. Coming in at number 3 is The Banshees Event from Martin McDonagh, a movie that really took me by surprise. 2 incredible lead performances with a bunch of amazing performances between Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Barry Keoghan, Barry Condon. All the people that are in this movie give absolutely amazing performances, and it was crazy to see such a simplistic premise that blows up into something so emotionally impactful that is an allegory for what was occurring in the country at the time. But aside from all that, you can just see it as these two people who come from very different worlds, who want very different things out of life, who are trying to approach living in very different ways. And I loved that so much about this movie. I have not stopped thinking about it since I watched it, and I plan on watching this one over and over again. My top 2 were very difficult because these are arguably 2 of my favorite films from last year. They could flip-flop based on the day of the week. I think they are both perfect films. I don't have a single qualm with either one of them, and we'll get into it now. So coming in at number 2 is the film Aftersun. This movie unlocked emotions in me that I didn't know were possible for a film to unlock. It is so different from anything that I've ever watched as far as a simple story about a daughter and her estranged father, but it's done in not a Hollywood way whatsoever. It's all through very simple interactions. Most of the film is very lighthearted and fun. There are very few intense emotional moments between characters that are heavily impactful, but the ones that are there, they feel so lived and real that for a while I forgot I was watching a movie. There's a scene towards the third act of this film that was one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in a movie, period. And if you have not seen Aftersun on this list, this is one that I would tell every single person to go see. It will impact you in one way or another. And then number 1 is a surprise to probably no one, is Everything Everywhere All at Once, one of the most unique and brilliant films made in the past 20 years. I'm so thrilled to see the Daniels get so much recognition for this beautiful piece of film that they put together. I loved every second of this. Every single actor in this film gave a brilliant performance. I love seeing all of them get awards recognition because each and every one of them deserves it. This movie will probably take multiple awards away, and it deserves every single one that it takes away. I love this movie a lot. I will continue to love this movie a lot, and I hope you love it just as much as I did. So that is my ranking of all 21 of the Oscar films that I have seen. Do you agree or disagree with my ranking? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know, of the ones you have seen, what does your ranked list look like? And as always, I have done full reviews of every single one of these films on my channel. You can find them all in the past month. They're all in the new releases from last year playlists that I have set up. So check those out if you want to hear my full elongated thoughts, but those are the brief reasons as to why those films fall in those places on that list. As always, if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to putting out more for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.